Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bit of a throwback back in our basement abodes. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman. Zach, how are you?
Doing well. Excited for the show. I'm saying doing well in the sense that I get to do a show with you. This is awesome. It's been a hectic day. That's why we're not in studio. It's been a hectic day for both of us, but it is
Bit of a comedy of errors on both ends, yes.
yeah. But the show must go on, as Jalen Hurts said last week, and this
Yes,
show must go on.
Jalen Hurts famously coined the phrase, the show must go on.
Well, we are an Eagles podcast, and the starting quarterback said it, so I think it's appropriate to say the show is going on, and it's good to see you. And you can't see Julia but I'm appreciative of all Julia's help in producing this.
Well, I think everybody's very curious. They want to know what the deal is, what's going on. I'm home with this sick kid. This is, I think, the second time this has happened in terms of us being on the beat together. You with a flat tire. Is this a thing that you feel like happens to you more in your life than most people, or is this just
I think it happens to me more than most people, but I would.
Is this more than two?
This is two in the past 3 years.
For the past 4 years, 3 or 4 years, yeah.
Past 3 years.
Had you had any before then?
I mean, yeah, actually, there was a period of time where I was getting them quite a bit. Well, I should
more
say
than this? More than 2 and 3 years?
Well, in the city, like I had a nail straight through my tire today. I'm in the city a lot, obviously driving around. That went right. So, but today's situation was such that for the audience, I was going to go into the studio. I would be in the studio, Bo would be at home, and we were going to do it like this. And then I'm leaving for NovaCare about an hour and 20 minutes before, and I feel it right away. And I'm like, oh man! And I turn around and come home, and I had that nail in there. I took a ride share to work, so I can be there for Sirianni. And was in the locker room and spoke to Jalen Hurts. Took a ride share back. Got home at 2:27. Came right to the computer, and I'll figure out the flat tire after the show. So
I wonder what the explanation could be for you having more flat tires than the average bear.
I don't think I have more than the average person, actually.
I mean, I think you do. If this period of having 2 and 3 years is not the time in your life in which you've had an abnormal amount of flat tires, in which there was another period in your life when you got them all the time, then yeah, I think you do have them more.
I didn't get them all the time. There was one period when I had like 3 and 5 years.
Okay. I think that's probably more than the average person.
Okay. I don't have any stats on flat tires. I do have stats on the Eagles running game, but not flat tires.
Okay, we're gonna have. I'm excited to talk about the alternate history in this podcast in a little bit about what would have happened, what would things look like in all of our lives if Josh McDaniels instead of Nick Sirianni had been the man hired to be the new Philadelphia Eagles head coach. But we will talk about that in a little bit. First, why don't we get to the standard stone cold newsman news and updates? Zach, what do you have from the NovaCare complex for us?
So Cam Jurgens. The Eagles started his 21-day practice window. The Eagles have a walkthrough today. Actually, as we speak, they have a walkthrough. So they are not doing a full practice. They're doing their Wednesday walkthroughs. And Cam Jurgens will be out there. But whether he's brought to the 53-man roster this weekend depends on how he looks. I think the fact that he's back at practice is a good sign. Julio Jones brought to the 53-man roster. So Julio Jones is now officially part of the 53, not on the practice squad. And the Eagles brought in an EJ to take his place on the practice squad. So they brought in tight end EJ. Let me get the exact information here.
Jenkins.
EJ Jenkins. Yep. Who
Zach, of all of Howie Roseman's roster fetishes, the things that he does time and time again, do you think that like tight end projects is his favorite? Is the one that really gets him going the most?
No, but it's certainly up there. I mean, he likes the.
like
Yeah.
take shots on these like tight end prospect, like these theoretical guys. These like Tyree Jackson worked out better than all of them, and he's not even here anymore.
I don't blame him, by the way. But back when Howie Roseman had a radio show, the Howie Hour, on Mondays,
Wow,
seriously,
what a pull!
I used to go to every show. I would go. I'd be at the Eagles facility for Andy Reid's press conference or Chip Kelly's press conference. Well, no, this was Chip Kelly's press conference because he
Howie
had
Hour.
it.
That was the
He
best
had
name
it
they
there.
could come up with.
I don't know if it was actually called the Howie Hour, but it was the Howie Hour.
Mm.
With Anthony Gargano of by the way, of all city has a national show. You can check that out now.
Got Lane Johnson on the debut episode.
Yes. So Howie was doing that show over at Chickies and Pete's, and I
That
would
lasted
go over
1 year, right?
I think it lasted 2.
2?
I think
Okay.
13 and 14, not 15. So anyway, so I used to go over there and listen to what he had to say, and then I would try to sneak a question or two in as he was
On his way
leaving,
out?
right?
Okay.
Yeah. I used to go over for Andy Reid shows as well, my first year on the beat, 2012. And one time I asked Howie about the practice of college basketball players moving to tight end. And he said that they had a specific scout for that who was like mining college basketball players. And I was like fancying myself whenever I'd be watching college basketball, like trying to find the ideal tight end, not for Howie, just in general. Like I wanted to see if it was something that I could do.
This is one of my greatest calls of all time, actually, Zach. We used to discuss this on the Eagles Beakley podcast back on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And I called out, I was looking for a bulky, undersized rebounding maven. And I said, let's go get Mo Alley Cox. Mo Alley Cox.
Did you really?
Called
VCU.
It. Yes.
Okay. I called out Rico Gathers.
Well, I won.
Now Rico made the NFL.
Yeah, that's true. But and for all of that hard work, all you got was Rico Gathers and Mo Alley Cox. Was that really time well spent?
You never know when you stumble upon Antonio Gates or Julius Peppers. Shall I go on? Right. Jimmy Graham.
EJ Jenkins. EJ Jenkins is not even this guy was a wide receiver. It's just that
he was a wide receiver.
Of all of these, how he loves this like the theoretical tight end, and there's always going to be, it's fine. It's a fine use of a roster spot, but
yeah, I'm not going to rip on him for that. I'm not going to rip on him for that. Like who's
ripping? I'm just talking about it's nice that he's open with his kink.
This is open with his kink. This is a competitive business. What you want to do is you don't want to leave any stone unturned. You don't want ever for Jimmy Graham to pop up and you're like, I wish I knew about him, or Antonio Gates to pop up and say, I wish I knew about him. That's the job. And if you're not, there's an expression that an editor once told me. They said, if you're not writing it, you're reading it. When I was saying I was going to hold this for for like next week. He's like, if you're not writing it, you're reading it. And it's kind of like that. If you're not scouting him, you're playing him. Right. So
I guess we don't need to spend the whole hour on this little thing, but there is also a difference between like finding a guy coming out of college and just like adding a guy who's already been in the league to your practice squad, who's already proven that he's not Antonio Gates. But anyway, continue on.
You're really pumped up about the EJ Jenkins signing. I honestly did not expect 8 minutes on EJ Jenkins. I didn't even have the name in front of me when it happened. But there we go.
Which is a rarity for you.
Yeah. So those were the transactions before practice or before the workday started, if you will. Nick Sirianni's press conference. We can kind of get into that. I was in the locker room, caught up with a few guys in there. And then it was at Jalen Hurts' press conference. And now here. So it was a condensed Wednesday, as I said, because of the walkthrough. Oh, and I spoke to Mike McCarthy today as well. That was a good one.
Did he give you an Austin Powers impression?
Does he do Austin Powers impressions?
Yeah, he famously loves Austin Powers. He has the mojo moment in training camp.
Oh,
this is, you are like Mr. Consume every piece of NFL content. How do you not know this? It was a big part of Hard Knocks.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is like how he stays hip with the young players on his team. Is
Austin Powers is staying hip? Austin Powers was when I was like in 5th grade.
Exactly. You
That's
know
not
that.
saying that's
Even
not
you,
saying him.
even you know
Yeah.
that. But Mike McCarthy thinks that this is a way to stay current with the times.
Okay.
So, what did you learn from Nick Sirianni?
So, man, he has a spirited defense of Kenny Gainwell.
You got back
Jeff
into it
McClain,
today.
yeah, Jeff McClain from the Inquirer asked him why Kenny Gainwell's the number 2 back over Boston Scott or something along those lines, and he basically said that you guys didn't ask me this question last week. You know, when he knocked over 2 people to score a touchdown against Miami, or in the playoffs last year when he gave these valuable snaps for the Eagles. He said that Kenny Gainwell's doing things that kind of we don't see at the and we being the media and the public. And then he
The Luddites,
continued
yeah.
harping on this point that if he benched him after a fumble, then he would have to bench Jalen Hurts after an interception, or AJ Brown after a drop, or Brian Johnson after a bad call. And like, I think that's
Ridiculous
a little bit of a
equivalency.
stretch.
Like those guys are
Yeah,
not on that level.
yeah, I think that's a bit of a stretch. But nonetheless, this is kind of they're pretty committed to he's pretty, I shouldn't say committed to Gainwell. The proof will be on Sunday, right? But
Yeah, I mean,
he's
this is
defending
like a week
Gainwell.
ago. Arthur Smith is calling everybody a
Yeah.
moron for complaining about Desmond Ritter's play, and then he benches him a week later. Like, let's let this one play out.
Well said. We will let this one play out. A lot of questions about Dallas week, like we predicted, and Sirianni's kind of evolved about Dallas week. If you remember his first Dallas game, he had the Beat Dallas shirt on, and the the whole thing was kind of pumping up the rivalry. And now his whole point is that if he inflates this game, right, what does that mean about the previous 8 games? He's like, then you'll say that we lost the Jets because we didn't play hard enough, right? So or because we didn't emphasize it enough. So he says every game is important, but he says he does want the fans to really like be into Dallas week and to be loud and to create that environment. Dallas Goedert says this is his favorite week of the year. Dallas week. My son, he might have heard in school. I don't know where he heard this. He heard Dallas sucks, right? I said, don't say sucks. That's not nice. But Dallas
Like,
Goedert.
what? That's just Emily's motto when you're out of the house. This is when she thinks she can get in her cheers.
This Dallas sucks.
Yeah,
Maybe so. Yeah, I'm like, we have to maintain our journalistic integrity in this house. Right? So Dallas Goedert. But I did ask him. I'm like, I could have asked this at any point during the past 6 years. I recognize that. But like, what's your reaction when you hear the crowd say Dallas sucks? And he's like, his first year, he thought his first year is like, what's going on? But like now he loves it. Now he loves when they say Dallas sucks. He looks forward to it. So
that's pretty good. Now, I will say that reminds me of what my
with Dallas
favorite.
Reynolds.
Yes, my favorite Les Bowen moment of all time
Yes.
was Les Bowen in the background. The just absolute incredulous look when Andy Reid was asked about whether he was concerned about starting a player named Dallas against Dallas.
well, that's a little different than my question. I was just curious if there was a team in Zachary, Louisiana, okay, and or let's say a writer in Zachary, Louisiana, okay, and someone was saying Zachary sucks, right? I would kind of be like, whoa, wait a second,
But nobody calls you Zachary.
That's true. Only my wife, my mother, and when they're mad at me.
Does Emily calls you Zachary?
When she's mad, yeah, Zachary, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, Zachary, yeah. So if you hear Zachary, it's usually not good.
Well, there's an interesting like pathos to the Dallas Goedert thing because he's named Dallas because his dad was a big Cowboys fan, but that dad is no longer in his life, really. Like he was raised by his mother. That's a long ago separation, and so like I don't know, maybe there's something under the hood about going up against Dallas for Dallas Goedert.
A lot to unpack there. I couldn't tell you that, but yeah, you wrote a really good story on Goddard last year. I would recommend everyone checking that out.
All right. Well, if you want to go to the game and chant Dallas sucks and confuse your own tight end, there's a way to get tickets, and that is at Game Time. Because buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you will have. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. And we always talk about those images of seat views. You want to know where you're going to sit. You want to know what it's going to look like. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code PHLY for 20 bones off.
And now let me tell you about Wheelhouse Cards
Yeah,
because
boys.
big. My son loves Wheelhouse Cards. I love Wheelhouse Cards too because of the gear there at Shibe Vintage Sports. But Wheelhouse Cards is and I mean this. It's the top sports card gift and apparel shop in the Delaware Valley. It's certainly my go-to sports card gift and apparel shop in the Delaware Valley. Their motto is cards and community because love of sports unites us all. They carry all of your favorite card brands like Topps, Chrome Baseball, and Mosaic Football. And I will also add that they have Pokemon there, which my son's a big Pokemon card fan, and that's kind of his go-to, although he is transitioning more to baseball and football cards too, so he's enjoying those as well. They also have t-shirts, hats, and hoodies from brands like Mitchell & Ness, 47 Brand, Junk Food, Starter, and Shibe Vintage Sports. Looking to grade your sports card collection? Wheelhouse offers PSA grading submissions. They also have tons of different family-friendly events and birthday parties every month. I went to the trade day, and I will be at the next trade day because my son gave me instructions for how to do it better next time. Stop into either of their stores in Wayne or Westchester. They're open 7 days per week at 11 a.m. Use code PHLY and get $10 off any purchase of $25 or more in store. Also, be sure to give them a follow on Instagram at Wheelhouse Cards. I am following them there. Wheelhouse Cards.
All right, Zach, anything else you want to discuss from today's action at the NovaCare complex?
So in the locker room, obviously a lot of conversation about the Dallas game. The running game came up quite a bit, and rightfully so. I mean, they have not been running the ball as effectively in these past few games. And we spoke about it with Baldy yesterday, whether you think it's the offensive line, whether you think it's Jalen not running. The RPRs aren't theirs as much as they were when Jalen was healthier. But I would say that Nick Sirianni kind of said it's a week-to-week thing, and they do what it takes to win. Some, in recent weeks, they've had to pass the ball quite a bit more. And I hear that. Look, they could have scored 50 points against Washington, right? So I'm not up in arms about it, but this is a week when they're going to have to run the ball. I think Dallas is vulnerable on the ground, and that's,
the
Eagles
yesterday.
Yeah, the Eagles had that drive, that 13-play, 75-yard drive to take the commanding lead in the fourth quarter last year, where they ran on 10 of 11 plays, and they kind of imposed their will against the Cowboys. So curious to see that. I have a story on allphly.com right now. Well, I have kind of Eagles thoughts and notes, but I have the numbers there of what the running backs have done, and the running backs haven't been particularly effective here. There's kind of this school of thought, well, the yards per carry are brought down because the quarterback sneaks. But think about this. Their yards per carry are actually higher when you if you include the quarterback there. The running backs are only averaging 3 yards per carry in these past few games. So that needs to be something the Eagles, they must improve it, and I think they will improve it this week.
Yeah, I think it's interesting and noteworthy, not from like a what's wrong with the Eagles' offense standpoint. As you said, they could have scored 50 points. They scored whatever it was, 38, and fumbled inside the 5-yard line twice. But it's interesting from a what changed point of view, because early in the season and all of last year, they were able to run the ball at will when they wanted to run the ball, and they are not able to do that right now. And so, for the reasons that Baldy said about, one of the easy ways to get at this Cowboys defense is by sort of running the ball down their throats. With the big game on Sunday, it's an interesting and important aspect of this game is, can they do it? So is your sense that Cam Jurgens is going to be back for this game?
Yeah, I think so. I did see Cam in the locker room, walking fine. Did not really. I'll catch up with him in terms of like a formal interview Thursday, maybe Friday, but hopefully Thursday.
And probably because today was a walkthrough, you didn't get.
Yeah.
But tomorrow's practice, you'll get a look at what the offensive line looks like.
Exactly. So we will have our show before practice tomorrow, but Friday's show, I will make sure to report back exactly what I see from that practice. And actually, maybe I'll probably do a YouTube short tomorw. It'll give you something to check out. Yeah, and we'll put that on the IG.
Do a little jig on that bad boy.
Yeah, I'm now the YouTube short. No pun intended there. It's because it's 1 minute. It's not because a short guy's doing it. So.
You never miss an opportunity. You never miss one.
That's a shout out to the fact that I read all the comments. And there was a comment there 2 weeks ago about why it were like typical they're making Z Berm do the YouTube shorts. And then someone was like trying to stand up for my honor and say like, well, it's because he worked hard. He's there. He's working hard. He's just trying to provide more content. And the guy was like, no, it's like a height joke. So yeah. So that I was joking with some other reporters about this, right? If I might have said this on the show at some point, but Nick Sirianni made a reference in his press conference on Monday to a tweet that Elliott Shore-Parks had. And he said, like, someone made me aware of this. If I was a coach, like I probably couldn't be a coach for this reason, because I wouldn't do someone made me aware. Like I would honestly say, like, yeah, I was reading your article, and in the third paragraph, I didn't like the way you phrased that. And
did you see the Marcus Frazier thing the other day?
Marcus Freeman, the Notre Dame coach?
Marcus Freeman, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, how how the reporter's the flag football coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. But I would really be going through, like, I listened to your show, the 47th minute. You don't quite have that right. Next time, talk to me before you make that point. So
yeah, but would you do that on camera, or would you do that behind the scenes?
Probably behind the scenes, actually.
Yeah.
But if they wrote an article that I'd like, I would be like, that was a good article, Like McLean was asking me a question today. I'd say I liked that Jalen Carter article today. I thought the anecdote about Nolan Smith running out of gas on 95. I thought that was a good anecdote. I would say, Bo, I really like that Kevin Byard story on allphly.com. 28 interceptions in his career. Going through all 20 quarterbacks, that was a really good pull that he had for some of the Josh Johnson pull. I was impressed by that. Like, the Dak Prescott line.
Interceptions against all three NFC East teams, but not the Eagles.
The Dak Prescott one, like, I would read everything. I mean, I read everything now, so I would read anything. I would read everything.
You'd read everything, even the Kevin Byard interview.
Especially the Kevin Byard interview, which all our viewers can check out on allphly.com. And Sunset Shaz, I appreciate the comment you left on my notes that it was good seeing Bo and I write on the same day, because you love the pods, but you love seeing us writing, and I appreciate that, Sunset Shaz. Thank you very much for your support as always.
Don't get used to it.
It's the difference between Bo and me right there.
I have an inside media question for you, Zach, which we haven't discussed yet.
Okay.
You did not get to go yesterday. Did we talk about this on the podcast, or was that off the podcast about you missing the coordinators yesterday?
Probably off the pod.
Okay. Well, that was because of the Fletcher Cox stop by.
Which makes you
stop by.
I thought that was awesome.
I thought it was fantastic. I would love it if he would do it again. good insight from Fletcher Cox. I thought the discussion of those young guys and Jalen Carter in particular was interesting. We had a chance to chop it up beforehand, and I was telling him how I'm still getting over taking that one chip challenge that he gave me. Like physically, I don't know if I've ever recovered. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I say in my mind, I was thinking like I ask you guys to do silly stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe for once I should do that." So I don't know that he respected that, but it was an answer at least. But anyway, because of that, you opted to be there for Fletcher and not at the coordinators. I know that was tearing you apart inside, but that also meant that today was your first day at the Novacare complex, I believe, with the newest Eagles beat writer. Did you have a chance to walk by this person? Was there any iciness between the two of you? Did you haze him in any way? What's going on?
No, I literally went up the minute I saw him, went up, shook his hand, introduced myself, and
spit in his face.
I would love to help anyway. I tried making small talk, and I always do that, man.
Yeah, I know you always make small talk if you know.
Oh wow, height joke from Bo. Jeez, really sticking it to me there. No, that's not at all what I was going. But glad what's on your mind, Bo. No, I honestly just I respect everyone's work, and I'm excited. Anytime there's been a new writer, I feel confident saying this. You can ask any new person on the beat. I would go up, I'd introduce myself, offer to help, and try to be as accommodating as I can.
You're the president of the PFWA. You gotta, they're your constituents.
It's just the right thing to do, right? Do unto others as you would want done to you. So that's kind of how I do.
But did you put a little extra into that handshake?
Well, I always believe in a firm handshake.
I know you do. Yeah.
So yeah.
You do really stick it in there.
My father taught me firm handshake, make eye contact. Yeah. I'm 37 years old. Still think that every time I meet somebody.
Okay. That's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I want to see how this relationship develops. I mean, this is a guy who ostensibly is as good as both of us combined.
Bo, you're yeah.
I mean, that's what a talent.
I'm curious what your interaction would be, Bo.
No, I thought his introductory article was very good. I'm looking forward to reading his coverage. Good addition to the beat.
Absolutely.
All right. Before we get on to the McDaniels of it all, let's talk about Shady Rays, because Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers an unrivaled product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn, durable frames and world-class optics for all outdoor adventures. And if you're into winter sports, their quick swap snow lenses switch easily from full sun to low light. Don't let changing light conditions slow you down on the slopes when all you need is Shady Rays snow goggles. That's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost or broken replacements. This is like the most wild thing I've ever heard. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. Shady Rays is also committed to making a difference in communities across the U.S. through their Impact program, teaming up with nonprofits to help people live healthy, courageous lives through some of their most challenging times. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out an amazing deal for the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people.
And on yesterday's show with Fletcher Cox, I guess where I was sitting for the first time, some people saw my sneakers. And I'm not bringing this up. I'm not bringing this up to reignite a fashion conversation. I think we kind of beat that one to death. But I would say that I appreciated a nice word I got on my sneakers. And if anyone here, and if anyone here is into sneakers, or even if you just kind of want to learn more, I know just the place for you to go. The Drops by Soul Savvy app makes it easy to keep up with all the latest news, releases, raffles, and sales in the sneaker world. It is your one-stop shop for everything sneakers. They have drop alerts, instant notifications, which are great because you never have to miss a release again, and you'll get instantly notified whenever your size is available to buy. They have free raffle management, which is awesome because you can keep track of all the raffles that happen in sneakers with our raffle tracker. And they have a release calendar, which is always good because the accurate release calendar will keep you updated on releases that are upcoming. This Saturday, November 4th, for instance, there's a drop alert for the Air Jordan 1 Reimagined Royal drops. The drops by Soul Savvy will notify you when and where it's dropping. Download the app and never miss a release. Sign up for Soul Savvy by clicking the links in the description below or by visiting links.soulsavvy.com/PHLY. And I think it's important for me to spell this out for you, for all the audio listeners. That's links.soulsavvy.com/PHLY. Or you can head over to the App Store and download the Drops by Soul Savvy app.
All right, Zach, let's talk alternate timelines. Like in, I guess it's not quite like in that show, The Affair. That's a little bit different. But sliding doors, you're familiar with that?
Yeah, it's the subway. He misses it, and the whole life happens differently.
Good for you. Okay.
Yeah. My grandfather references that to me quite a bit. I always think about sliding doors moments throughout life. Yep.
Nice. Good pull. Good pull from Grandpa.
Mm-hmm. Pop up.
We call him Grandpa. What do we call him?
Pop up.
Pop up.
Pop up.
Pop up was me too. All right. There are several of these over the past couple of years for the Eagles, right? There is the Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson flirtation from last offseason. There is the Allen Robinson potential signing from last offseason. But maybe the biggest one was the hiring of Nick Sirianni, which by all reports, including our understanding, was that their final two for Jeffrey Lurie in 2021 after firing Doug Peterson was Josh McDaniels and Nick Sirianni. And obviously overnight, Josh McDaniels fired midway through his second season. He's had 2 jobs in the NFL, and both times he's been fired in his second season. It seems like once again, acrimony with management, with ownership, with the players, a bit of a disaster once again. I want to talk about what you think a Josh McDaniels Eagles regime would have looked like. So I guess go ahead if you want to jump in.
Well, fair question, but first off, credit to you because you broke the story of their interest in McDaniels back in January 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think nobody really cares about the scoop scoreboard. You know, it's like who's chasing this nonsense. Let's be fair.
Okay,
my opinion, but you're doing that for your bosses. That's about it.
Okay, fair enough.
My position. Well, I have a few thoughts, but I think the biggest thing that I can say with certainty about how the last 3 years have gone for the Eagles is that I think, like we have talked about, I think most of the Eagles' success is ownership driven. And so I am not, I don't think that Josh McDaniels would have worked out well here. But the thing that I'm 100% sure of is that if Josh McDaniels were the Eagles head coach, Jalen Hurts would not be the quarterback.
And why are you 100% sure of that?
Because Josh McDaniels is the opposite of like what we have talked about. Like what is good about coaches is adjusting your philosophy and your coaching to the players that you have. Why I think Josh McDaniels is not a good coach as a head coach is that he doesn't do that. And he's only looking to import people who fit what he wants to do on offense. And Jalen Hurts is not his kind of quarterback. And I don't believe that, like, especially early on, before Jalen Hurts had any kind of like reason to really believe after his rookie season when, you know, he's spending time in the backfield next to Carson Wentz. Like those plays are so funny to look back on. I think that offseason, if not that offseason, the next offseason, they would have brought in somebody like a Jimmy Garoppolo who was just a plug and play, let's run Josh McDaniels offense type guy.
I hear what you're saying. I would start it off by agreeing with the top of your argument, which is I think success is often organizational success, right? And in that there's an organizational infrastructure. Like there's a reason why it's a chicken or an egg thing. And I wrote about this before the Super Bowl last year. Are the coaches that the Eagles hire always, the last five coach? Well, I'll say every coach that Jeffrey Lurie's hired has won the NFC East, right? The last three coaches, or three of
And
the
every
last
single
four.
coach who's hired has been deemed the wrong hire by Mike
Yeah.
Lombardi.
Or not won the NFC East because Ray Rhodes didn't, but made the playoffs within the first 2 years. Every coach made the playoffs within the first 2 years. Okay, which like doesn't happen very often. Nick Sirianni made it his first year. Doug Peterson made it his second year. Chip Kelly made it his first year. Andy Reid made it his second year. Ray Rhodes made it his first year. So I think part of this is like organizational infrastructure is important, and that determines a lot. Like perhaps a good coach might not have worked out in Las Vegas, or a better coach than McDaniel might not have worked out in Las Vegas because of the organizational, because of the organization it is relative to the Eagles. But I do agree with you in terms of I was really unimpressed with what Josh McDaniel did from like a personnel perspective. I mean, I don't watch the Raiders enough to tell. Like every time I watch them, I haven't really been impressed with like the scheme and the coaching and all that. But just from the personnel perspective, the roster that he had, that he inherited, to the roster that he has now, just a series of like odd decisions and just loading up on all these former Patriots. Just a series, odd decision after odd decision. And the fact that he didn't make it in the year 2 of a 6-year deal, like they've been totally uncompetitive. They jettisoned Derek Carr for Jimmy Garoppolo, to your point, right? I mean, they brought in like Jarrett Stidham at one point. So they've been unimaginative at the quarterback position. They've made a series of odd moves. They don't really have a schematic advantage. Yeah, Josh McDaniels has had 2 shots, which is 2 more than most coaches, and certainly 1 more than most failed head coaches who don't make it into their second year. And really, he's had 3 shots because he was hired by Indianapolis and he backed out of that as well.
True.
And he's a really good offensive coordinator. Because he also had the best player in the history of football, or the best quarterback in the history of football during his time. But I look at it and say that this shows you that there's more to making a hire than the offensive and defensive schemes, right? It's like it's all these things we talk about with Nick Sirianni, the leadership, the management, the attention to detail, all these different ideas are far more important to me than like what was your offense ranked during your time as offensive coordinator.
And that's what's so bizarre about the fact that in theory and in reporting, it came down to McDaniels and Sirianni, because they are such opposite types of coaches and were at the time. Like if McDaniels comes in, he's coming in, that he's going to be this authoritarian who is going to want to wrest control away from the front office to some degree, even if, he and Howie Roseman had what they thought was a good relationship. I think both sides would have known that was not going to last for very long. He's the guy who was going to want to have a hand in everything in the building, and was not going to be a, quote unquote player's coach, right? Like this is a guy who wants things to be done his way. And Nick Sirianni is the opposite of that. He's like, you take care of personnel, let me coach the coaches and coach the players, and, focus on connecting and all that stuff. It's so opposite. And it's bizarre that like the choices came down to those two. And listen, maybe there were other people involved. We know that Nick Sirianni was not on their initial list of interviews for head coach. It's a little bit like a bit of a lucky accident. And again, some of this is organizational, but it's bizarre that it came down to these 2 guys who were so different.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, look, I don't know Josh McDaniels, right? I've spoken to people who do, and like I hear he's a really bright offensive mind, and I would imagine that if you're sitting down in an interview with him and you hear him explain football and discuss football, you're probably impressed because I'm sure I mean, it's hard to have as much offensive success as he's had in his career as an assistant. With now, I know he had Tom Brady, but without like knowing what you're doing, and he worked under Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick knows what he's doing. But like I said, so I can understand like being impressed sitting down with him, but I can't emphasize this enough. There's so much more to that job, so much more to that job than calling plays and being and being like having an offensive system.
Yeah, but also even if you think that it could have gone differently, from a who are we going to hire perspective, like Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman know that if they bring in Nick Sirianni, like he's going to be deferential to them in a lot of ways. They're gonna, we're excited about the coach you can become, right? They're gonna get to
Okay.
mold him a little bit. If you bring in Josh McDaniels, that is not the case.
Well, that is true. I mean, that's probably more the case with it's probably more so with Howie than with, like Jeffrey owns the team, so but
I actually think the Howie of it is an important angle here. Like I think that even listen, after 2020, there were people who thought that Howie Roseman should have been fired along with Doug Peterson. I didn't think that that was a crazy idea at the time. I thought maybe they needed to just start from scratch. But in keeping Howie Roseman, that's one thing. If you had kept Howie Roseman and hired Josh McDaniels, you're sort of cutting off Howie at the knees a little bit. I think that you would have done that knowing that one of these guys is going to win out. Whereas hiring Nick Sirianni is more of a show of faith in Howie. We believe that you can turn this thing around quickly. You've done it before. Obviously, that was the right decision.
yeah.
No doubt about it. But I think that like that decision did have a bit of a Howie tinge to it.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, ultimately, Jeffrey's the one hiring the coach, but yeah, Howie's
I don't mean I
Howie's
don't mean I don't mean
uh,
a Howie tinge in that he
uh,
had a hand in doing it. I mean, from a Jeffrey believing in Howie standpoint.
oh yeah, I mean, and in that sense, Jeffrey, he picked the right horse, so to speak, right? Like
No doubt.
Howie's really good at his job. Number one, but also I don't like these coaching models where like you hire the coach, then the coach like picks the GM who makes sense with him,
Ridiculous.
and again, I don't know if in Vegas, I think technically Dave Ziegler was hired before McDaniels. Is that right? I think Dave Ziegler was hired and then McDaniels, but they were kind of like the package deal,
Yeah.
right? Like I like the idea that your GM and your coach have a little bit of like distance between them, or there's not there's not like you're just working with the guy that was in the front office when you were there, right? At your previous place. But yeah, I mean, if that would have been a bad outcome for the Eagles if Josh McDaniel came in, like wrestled control away and installed kind of like the Patriot system here. I actually think the way the Eagles have, like the way Howie thinks, you can quibble about X, Y, and Z move, right? But the way he builds his roster, the approach that he takes in terms of like you know, and especially in these past few years, and in terms of where he allocates the draft picks, being aggressive. That's how I would want my team to be constructed, more so than the way Vegas and the Patriots and the Texans, for instance, have done it in recent years.
100%. And I don't think that it would have, even if Howie Roseman and Josh McDaniels were getting along, it would not have been the same philosophy. It would not have been like, go get me stars and I'll figure out how to play them.
Yeah.
It would have been like, all right, I need a 5'9" white slot receiver from a small school. I need
Well,
him. Pay him
I
$100
actually
million.
think
Like,
I actually think you're generalizing there because
I
Josh McDaniels had Hunter Renfro and didn't use him.
I know. I am joking, but
Yeah.
it
No,
would
but I
have
think more of
been
the issue is like
it would have been
I
go out and get me the guys I need to run my
yeah.
system.
Yeah, it would have been go pay these former Patriots receivers, right?
Right.
And that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm with you there.
Now, there was one place where I do think that the Eagles would have done a better job with McDaniels than McDaniels did in Las Vegas. Like I was surprised to see that and Antonio Pierce was named the interim head coach, right? So I went just looking at their coaching roster. That is a very underwhelming group of coaches. And we know that the Eagles have a heavy hand in the coaching staff and putting that coaching staff together. I do feel confident that if Josh McDaniels was here, his coaching staff would look a lot better in Philadelphia than it does in Las Vegas.
Yeah, now the thing is that
A lot of those guys are former Patriots guys.
no, the defensive coordinator that Josh McDaniels wanted to hire was Jonathan Gannon. Okay,
That's true.
so
That is who his defensive coordinator would have been.
yeah, like actually, Jeffrey Lurie had an interview with Dave Spadaro, I believe it was, after the hire for Sirianni, and said like Sirianni brought up Jonathan Gannon's name, and they were like, "This is the guy who keeps coming up. This is great," you know. So yeah, that's it would have been it would have been Gannon. Perhaps Matt Patricia would have replaced Gannon if Gannon got a head coaching job somewhere else. But no, I hear your point, and yeah, I mean, I clearly this worked out well for the Eagles. That's a credit to Sirianni. Like that's I always credit the players, right? When before, you joke with me about Jeff Stoutland, who's an outstanding offensive line coach, but I always say the credit goes to Lane Johnson, first. Like the credit goes to Nick Sirianni first because he's the one coaching the teams, right? But I do fundamentally believe that success is organizational success in the NFL, and that strong organizations tend to win.
So what do you think? What do you think a Josh McDaniels timeline would look like if he was the Eagles head coach?
So I don't know about the Jalen thing, right? Like,
do you think there's any chance that they would have been able to keep Carson Wentz?
No, I think Carson's
you think Carson was done no matter what?
Oh yeah, and Howie's still there at that point, so Howie's making that trade, right?
Okay. All right, so you make that trade.
Yeah,
good trade.
So you make that trade.
He probably gives Jalen 1 year, but instead of signing Joe Flacco, they sign Brian Hoyer or something like that.
Okay, is Brian Hoyer going to unseat Jalen?
Well, I don't know. Maybe for Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I mean, the question is after.
But I think they are probably not fully embracing everything Jalen Hurts can do. They're probably trying to make him something else.
Yeah, maybe. So maybe, honestly, maybe that first year, San Francisco, when they draft Trey Lance, right? Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo.
Very possible.
Yeah, maybe they go after Jimmy G there, right?
Yeah. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah. Or Jarrett Stidham, I see Cousin Grace saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, McDaniels' first year with the Broncos, he drafted Tim Tebow. So I don't know what he would have thought about. I honestly don't. I don't want to say he would not have kept Jalen Hurts. But Jalen needed development clearly, and he needed time, and he needed this infrastructure around him in terms. AJ Brown changes things quite a bit. So do you have that offseason that you have the following year? Josh McDaniels is exerting a heavy hand. I don't know the answer to that.
Here's another eventuality I think would have come to play. The core four, I think only Lane Johnson would still be here.
You think Kelsey would have been like?
I think Kelsey. It's not as fun. Like he's not coming back because it's not as fun. Yeah. Like part of the reason he's having so much fun is because they're winning and there's this nice vibe. That vibe would not be here. I don't think he's pushing his body again. I don't think he and Fletcher Cox would have got along very well.
Okay.
And I don't know that Brandon, like the team wouldn't have been good enough to like want to pay Brandon Graham to come back anymore.
I mean, look,
and I think Josh McDaniels would have wanted his own culture.
Okay. I mean, to your point about Lane went through a lot in 2021. Like,
maybe Lane wouldn't be here either.
Yeah. Look, there's been a lot of people who've left that Raiders organization who haven't had very kind things to say about the way that was. And similarly, that was the case in Denver a decade ago. But again, I don't want to say I don't know, but I mean, none of us know how it would have turned out. But the Eagles, like one thing that McDaniels does well is, slip there. That Sirianni does well, among many things, is this culture that he's created, and I'd say it's a player-driven culture that is like pushed by the head coach, but the players I think drive it home. And you said it well. Like Jalen sets the culture in that building, and the veteran leaders like have a heavy hand there. If this was
McDaniels is the kind of guy who would let Jalen lead the culture. I don't.
Well, then that would be problematic for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I don't think so. Let's keep this going, but first let's talk about Foco, Zach, because Foco is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season. Overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. Foco has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. Foco always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use promo code PHLY for 10% off. Plus, go to the All Philly locker. Get yourself some PHLY merch. Look it up. All right, Zach. Here's a question that was asked to us on Twitter that I thought was well stated. Of these three big what ifs, okay? Josh McDaniels over Nick Sirianni. If they had been able to trade for Russell Wilson instead of keeping Jalen Hurts, or if they had signed Allen Robinson and not traded for AJ Brown, which do you think would have been, like, I rank them in terms of what the biggest difference would be, and like how much worse they would be now than they would be in current day?
This is a great,
and then we can rank them in terms of what you think was actually the closest to happening.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I say this because I actually think, I think Russell Wilson.
Of course you're going to think this.
No. So I think Russell Wilson that would have been a sensible move. The problem is this: if you make the Russell Wilson trade, you don't have the draft inventory to make these subsequent deals. You don't get AJ Brown, right? You don't have Jalen Carter, right? You don't have money to spend on some of these other spots that they did. So they would have had Hassan Reddick, right? But I'm trying to think. I mean, they probably don't get Bradbury, or maybe they do. They structure the contract in a way that they can still do that. Now, so that would probably be the biggest one that would change things, because it hurts
even
the rest of your roster. What's that?
Even more than the coach?
Probably so, because I don't know if you can build the roster into what it's been if you gave away all that draft inventory and then if you paid him that money. That said, I actually think Russell Wilson could have been better here. Like, something happened in Denver last year. I can't believe he was that bad.
Because he's been so good this year?
He hasn't been. That's true. But, okay, so that's my one there. Now, literally today, I was having a conversation with a reporter. I don't want to say who it was, but the reporter was like kind of ripping on the Niners, and they're like, "Do you think he was saying that the Eagles wouldn't have lost like 3 consecutive games?" And I was like, "The Niners are missing, Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams, right?"
Who cares?
And he's like, if you took if 3 players were injured from the Eagles, would they lose like this? And I was like, yeah. Like, if Lane Johnson, AJ Brown, and Hassan Reddick were all missing time, that would majorly affect the Eagles, right? And I bring this up as a way of saying AJ Brown changes so much with that offense. And I'm not in any way diminishing Devontae Smith, nor am I diminishing the progress that Jalen Hurts has taken. But I think the offense will look very similar to the 2021 offense if you did not have A.J. Brown out there, because A.J.'s presence changes so much. So if you have Allen Robinson in there instead of A.J. Brown, now, that changes that changes so much. And then you probably take Trent McDuffie, who's a really good corner in Kansas City, by the way. You probably take him with that 18th pick, right?
I guess.
Yeah. And then you don't sign Bradbury because you have McDuffie. But I would still say that's probably the least, because there's look, if Allen Robinson was not productive here, they could still find a way to rebound, and you still have
he'd probably move on from his contract a year later.
Yeah, and Devontae's still developing. You still have Goddard, and you can go out this year and this past offseason and try to find a wide receiver.
And you still have those other picks.
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe then they trade for Calvin Ridley at the deadline last year, right? Like, there's so that's probably the least sliding door, but AJ Brown is so good. And then McDaniels, I guess I'll go McDaniels too, because I still think the organization's strong enough. But Yeah, the Russell Wilson thing would have dramatically changed everything.
Now, I would say from a what was actually closest standpoint, I think we can say pretty definitively the closest to happening for sure was the Allen Robinson signing. That
Yes.
was like
Yeah.
minutes away from
Yes.
happening. He had an offer he was going to accept from the Eagles and went to the Rams, and the Rams were willing to go a little bit higher. So that was absolutely about to happen. I think that the McDaniels over Sirianni thing was probably a little bit closer because I don't think that I think they wanted to trade for Russell Wilson or trade for Deshaun Watson, and from the beginning, we're told from those players' camps that they didn't want to come to Philadelphia, and that was sort of the end of it.
Which should be a red flag as it is. Who doesn't want to come to Philadelphia, right? This is awesome, this city.
True.
So yeah, like
do you agree?
There's nowhere else I'd rather live. So yeah, I agree. The Russell Wilson thing wasn't happening. The AJ Brown, I'm sorry, the Allen Robinson thing was literally there in his court. And Jordan Rodriguez from The Athletic had a really good piece last year, basically saying like the Rams swooped in at the last minute. He was about to sign with the Eagles. And McDaniels, yeah, so that's in the middle here. He was a candidate, but clearly they preferred Sirianni. I mean, clearly there was something about McDaniels that they didn't want to go forward with.
Got it. Okay. Anything else from the hypothetical that you think is worth exploring?
So this is a really good hypothetical here. Yeah, let me ask you this. Okay, curious. What's Jalen Hurts' career if he doesn't have the patience in Philly, and then if he doesn't get last year, he doesn't get AJ Brown, like because we always talk about the sheer force of will and Jalen Hurts,
he's a self-made guy.
And Jalen Hurts, so I had a sentence in a story this past summer that Jalen Hurts is the best example of compound interest, like from a football perspective. But actually, I need to give credit. I listened to an interview during the Las Vegas Summer League where Connor Barwin said that, and I thought that was a really good way of phrasing it.
About Jalen?
Yeah, I thought that was a really good way of phrasing it.
Stole it?
What's that?
Yeah, and you just stole his line?
Well, I didn't like do it verbatim, but I mentioned like an example of compound interest in football. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So
what could possibly be more Zach Berman than that?
But yeah, Jalen's a great testament to compound interest here. But so
what does compound interest mean?
You know what compound interest means?
Explain it to the listeners.
It's interest that compounds, right? So the interest collects every year, and then what you do is you collect interest on the sum of money that's already collected, right? The interest is compounding.
Okay.
So you get interest, okay, on the principal, and the interest, and then you collect interest on the interest that you've already created. So basically, while your pot grows, the interest every year grows on top of that.
Got it.
Yes, it's a wonderful concept, the compound interest.
It's great, and it's the best example. It's the best way to describe Jalen Hurts' career
from a football perspective. Yeah. So, anyways, like, would he have gone to?
You're getting 1% better every single day.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah. So, would you have would Jalen Hurts have gone elsewhere and become Jalen Hurts, or did he need all these environmental factors in place? An imaginative coaching staff, top offensive line, patience from ownership, and then the best one of the three best wide receivers in the NFL.
And it's the same question that is asked about, when you're doing these quarterback rankings, is how do you divorce Jalen Hurts from the offense he gets to play in and the players he gets to play with, more specifically the players he gets to play with, the offensive line, the AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert of it all. But I think my honest opinion is that I think the thing that the Eagles gave Jalen Hurts that he needed the most is what you said before, the patience. And I don't know that every organization would have given him the patience because he was only a second-round pick. Like, there are places where the coaching staff turns over and somebody else comes in and he's not their guy. Like, I don't think it's crazy to think that he could have had like Geno Smith's career, right? Where like he's got he just is deemed not a starter 2 years into his career and has to be a backup for a while, and then is given a shot and is very good. And obviously, I think he's better than Geno Smith, but I think there is a timeline in which he doesn't get to be a starter and is like behind the scenes. Now, I also think there's a dynamic here where he's so self-made that if he's in any kind of competition, and this is not dissimilar from what happened with Carson Wentz, right? Like even as a rookie, his force of personality in that locker room was like, guys were like looking at it, side-eyeing each other, like, this guy's better. Like, and I think that probably would have happened eventually somewhere. But there are if he was in a place where it had to be a little bit more McDaniels-y, we have to fit a square peg into a square hole. Let's see if he can do that. And if the talent on the outside wasn't as good, or if the offensive scheming wasn't as great, he would not be his full self. But I think that it's like your Stoutland thing. Like Jalen Hurts deserves like way most of the credit for Jalen Hurts becoming who he is. And I think he would have become that most of the time elsewhere. But I think that if he had not been given the full runway, then we may not have seen it yet.
Well said. I like that.
Do you disagree?
I would need a lot of time to think about that, but I think quarterback success is also environmental, right? And that a different coach, a different organization, it might look entirely different. And I do think the patience was a key part of it, but I think AJ Brown was a huge part of it too, right? Like AJ Brown changes everything from my perspective.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I also think that I think quarterbacks are a little bit less situation dependent than you do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we'll devote a show during the summer to that one because I think like draft season, I should say, like quarterbacks, there are very few quarterbacks. Yeah, you got to be Peyton Manning, who like you'll succeed no matter what. But
I don't agree with that.
Okay, I mean, I
don't think. I mean, I think any of the 5 or 10 best quarterbacks in the league would be good anywhere.
I think Russell Wilson's an example of how that's not the case.
I think Russell Wilson has fallen off a cliff.
Okay. Well, then Carson Wentz says hello on the way down, right? But
wow, shot.
Sorry. Yeah, that wasn't a nice comment. I take that back. That was an unnecessary shot.
Let's end it on that. Let's end it on Zach. He's shooting a bow and arrow through a turkey on the way down.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong of me there. My bad.
All right. Well, for Zach and Julia and Josh, we thank you for listening and watching.
Who's Josh?
Berman.
I don't think Josh is at work. He's not.
McDaniels is who I was talking about. The guy who was sort of the through line of the whole show. That was
gotcha. Okay. All right.
Got it. We thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 11:30. And for all of us, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Check out the Lane Johnson interview on the debut episode of the Anthony Gargano, Brian Baldinger league-wide NFL show on the All City Network. Check out our Fletcher Cox interview from yesterday. We'll talk to you later. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.